I will call to order the meeting of the Parks and Recreation Commission for December 16th. We will say the Pledge of Allegiance first. Ready? Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Ms. McGill, will you call roll, please?
Chair Longstreet.
Here.
Connor.
Here.
Burns.
Here.
Larimore Hall and Hockman are not present. Intern Torres Santos.
Here.
Okay, I see we're getting a lot of speaker slips in, and just a reminder that if you want to speak to an item, we must have one of the white speaker slips. So thank you. Changes to the agenda.
I have none, Chair Longstreet.
Okay, well, do we have? Okay. Okay. Written communications. I received one letter from Carol Bornstein, the chair of the Street Tree Advisory Committee, requesting that we consider the membership of that committee. And since it is not agendized, I would like to ask staff to put that on the agenda in the future, and probably in January, and we will deal with it. Any other written communications? Public comment. Any member of the public may address the Commission for up to 1 minute on any subject within the jurisdiction of the Commission that is not scheduled for a public discussion before the Commission. So that we have one speaker slip, Mr. Tybert. Would you like to come on up?
You all have my photograph, which I'm
Wait a minute. You're on, make sure you're on for me.
put on your refrigerator so you can see what a beautiful tree looks like. I stand before you vindicated of a crime I was accused of by your city arborist. I was accused of over-pruning a tree and changing its traditional shape, a charge that is ridiculous. And the Superior Court found this allegation to be without merit and dismissed the citation. I wonder if any of you people bothered to go over and look at the tree. Because what you end up looking like are just rubber stamp bureaucrats. Instead of looking and investigating these things, you're just saying, oh yeah, I think I should have gone over and talked to Mr. Downey about this and questioned him after you looked at the tree and why he would give me such a citation. I have yet to receive an apology for his overzealous behavior towards me. The citation had nothing to do with pruning, but was given out of vengeance and an abuse of power. And why? Because Mr. Downey wanted to scare the hell out of the rest of the tree community and show how powerful he is. In passing his draconian ordinances with your unquestioning, unthinking minds, you are causing hardship to the community you are sworn to protect. You ought to be ashamed of yourself about this. You're obviously doing what all bureaucrats seem to do, is to protect the rear end of other bureaucrats. Treating the public as if they were a bunch of morons who can't decide how they want their trees to be pruned without a city bureaucrat telling them how to do it. The people in the city should be yelling, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. But I, at this moment, seem to be the only one who feels that way. Thank you very much for letting me speak to you.
Thank you, Mr. Tybert. Okay, seeing no other public comment, we go to Commissioner Committee Assignment Reports. Anyone have?
Sure. I don't have a formal presentation because I'm just kind of spaced on that. I apologize. The multi-jurisdictional Front Country Task Force met a couple weeks ago. We talked about how the work done to keep the backcountry and the trails seemed to be proceeding as planned. We weren't sure if how the rains will take us. We feel that we did as much as we can do, and until the rainy season is over, we're not going to know if we did it right or not. But that's the task force. The Arts and Crafts Advisory Commission, so you guys know, has been asked to form an ad hoc committee with us so we can work out details on how to best manage the organization. They have a feeling that it's managed okay, and are not sure if they want to be on that task force. So as of right now, I'm the one member of that task force, and hopefully I can use all the power in the world to do something. I'm not sure. Do you want to talk about the Park Foundation?
Yeah, I'd just add the Front Country Trails. We did receive a very interesting report on trail building and the work that's been done recently with a trail engineer that came down from Tahoe, and also that they are still looking for volunteers to help with the assessments of the trail. And I think you can go onto the website and find out information on that. But they are still doing work in that area. The Park Foundation met today, and Commissioner Burns and myself attended. We discussed some fundraising ideas and some support of the department in some summer youth programs. And I would encourage any member of the public that is interested to join the Park Foundation and support Parks and Recreation services in the community. And look for some exciting things to be happening soon. So, any other reports? Okay, then that brings us to Commission and Staff Communications. Ms. Rapp, do we have any? Is this the proper time? I was watching Council last week and was pleased to see two of our employees receive their, was it Denise Reed received her 30-year pin, and Mark Roush received a 25-year pin. And I know many of our employees are dedicated and stay on a long time and do a wonderful job, and I'd like to congratulate them. Okay, so that brings us to Youth Council report. Diego.
Wonderful. Okay, the Youth Council recently made a new Youth Council appointment, and there are now 2 more vacancies, and one is going to be for a private school representative, and another one is just at large right now. And so we're looking forward to seeing if any other schools and youth agencies and neighborhood centers have any people that want to still get involved with the Youth Council. And we recently applied for a Youth Making Change grant, which is going to be funding for an idea of working with workshops and teaching teens their rights. And a lot of them wanted to understand what rights they have. And so that was an idea we came out with, and thought that, well, we can create workshops and have a speak out about it. And so currently, if we're able to get the grant, we'll be able to start with the workshops and training and the speak out. Our next meeting is the 21st of December, and we want to invite the Parks and Rec commissioners to stop by if possible, and that will be at the Teen Center at 6:30. And it's kind of be like a holiday dinner, just for anybody to come. And then, let's see. And then youth council members are helping out at the teen center more, and we want to get more teen memberships higher there because we have a little low point right now, but we're trying to get more youth to get involved with the teen center and to just how more kids can be there. And then lastly, we're going to be having our January 19th meeting possibly at the Westside Community Center because we want to have the other new youth council members to be experienced to the other centers around us. And so I think that's about it for our report.
Great, great. It's nice to see the teen council doing that outreach. That's wonderful. Any questions of Diego on what's happening? Okay, that brings us to the consent calendar and summary of council actions, of which your appointment, Diego, is top of the list. Welcome back for another year.
Thank you.
Any questions of staff on the other items on the summary of council actions? Yes.
Yeah, I actually have a question on item 3. It was reading of title only on ordinance changing the tree removal and excessive pruning. If someone could give me a brief overview of what is going on with that, that would be great. Thank you.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Burns, this is actually proposed ordinance changes that came to the Park and Recreation Commission, then moved on to the City Council, who referred it to the Ordinance Committee, and then back to City Council for approval. So this was a 2-year effort to tighten up some of the ordinances related to the preservation of our street trees, and in the process of which how the department manages our street trees is affected. And I can have Mr. Downey give you a brief overview, if you would like, to the specific changes, or we could actually, if the commission would like, we can come back and review it with you at the January meeting.
I think that it's going to be long, so.
Yeah, no, once you reminded me that we've seen it before, yes, I don't know if we need to put a long presentation, but we're going to have 2 new commissioners, so maybe a brief overview.
Sure.
Whether January or February might make sense.
We can do that. Actually, what we wanted to do as part of thinking ahead to having new commissioners, we want to actually do a review of the urban forest program with the commissioners and talk about the tree ordinances and how the forestry program works. So we already will be planning a workshop related to that, and we will be covering it as part of that for all commissioners.
Thank you. That's good. Okay, that brings us to the approval of minutes of November 18th, 2009. All had them to review.
I move we approve the minutes as presented.
And I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. So now we are to street tree items. Mr. Downey.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, the street tree item, first item is 3003 Paseo Tranquilo. The request was to remove 3 trees on the Lugar de Consuelo side of the property. At the time that we visited the site with the Street Tree Advisory Committee, the applicant came out and talked to us. I had a discussion with her about the potential of root pruning that could occur to help the sidewalk lifting. At that time, she felt that that wasn't important to remove those 2 trees any longer, but requested this 3rd tree on the right be removed. The Street Tree Advisory Committee looked at its location and its vigor and determined it might be appropriate to remove the tree. So the recommendation of Street Tree Advisory Committee staff is to approve the removal of the 1 tree closest to the corner.
Okay, we do have a speaker for C1, and that is Dr. John A. Clark. Wait a minute, isn't that? I'm Peggy Waller. Okay, you're on. Oh, okay, you had 3 on here, so. Yeah, okay.
3. Okay.
3, yeah. Okay, come on up, Miss Walls.
All right. Well, there's a couple of issues, and I think that this is definitely a good working point. When we requested the 3 tree removal, it was because we were going to replace with 2 other trees. We live on the long, corner, and we have 5 trees actually on this side, which is very unusual for the city. Most of the places have maybe 3, and some only have 1. The main concern is actually this large tree right.
Wait, you have to stay at the mic. I'm sorry.
Is the really large tree right there, and that's because that walkway that we poured maybe a little over a year ago has now lifted an inch. It's 1.5 inches on the side where the tree is, and it's an inch on the other side. And you can't see it, but there's roots that are exposed up. I have some other pictures up in front of the large tree, and that's our major concern, is that this is lifting our sidewalk, and before we put the new sidewalk in, the old one had cracked and been destroyed. So we love the trees. We would really like to remove just the large one. We'll leave all other trees, and we will plant another tree, but I would like to move it, so that it is further to the right, so that it won't impact our walkway. Even where that tree is, if someone gets out of their car, if the city had a sidewalk there, it would be destroyed. So that's just what I would like you to consider, and I don't know if that's even a possibility. I do know that he's talked about helping us figure out about cutting the roots back, but one of the things that he mentioned was that even if the roots are cut, there's a potential that that just slows them down, but it doesn't mean that it's going to stop it from causing the problem. So,
Okay, so you don't agree with the recommendation that is before us today?
well, I guess not. I'll leave the other tree. The most important tree is that one that's causing the problem. If you'd like to see the picture of the sidewalk, I have the pictures.
Well, yeah, that's okay. I'm just, we're dealing with what went before the Street Tree Advisory Committee, and what they've recommended. And okay, so thank you. We will look at the pictures and we will return them to you.
Okay. And so I just need to understand what's the process of when you make your decision. Is that today or?
Yes, we will be voting on this item today.
Okay.
Yeah.
So who do I hand these to?
Yeah. Cart, can you? Okay. Thank you. Mr. Downey, would you like to give us a little further explanation on anything?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, the sidewalk is far enough away from the tree that root pruning can occur to decrease the likelihood that this is going to continue to lift the tree. It is correct that there's no guarantee that that's going to stop, but any tree within proximity of this walk, if the roots are present, could cause that damage. The Street Advisory Committee's opinion was that if roots could be pruned, it wouldn't be necessary to remove this tree.
Can root barrier be installed when the roots are pruned?
Root barrier, Chair Longstreet, is a possibility, but again, that's only a purchase in time. The roots are deflected away from the sidewalk, but it doesn't prevent them from eventually getting there.
That's true. That's true. Okay. Any other comments or questions?
I went to the site, and I actually spent time looking at the tree that said it was going to be removed, and I honestly didn't look at the larger tree. So although I'm generally one to let's move on and move forward, I would like to postpone this for a month.
I agree with that.
Okay.
I mean, then I'll spend some time looking at it. I just don't. I never bothered to look at that tree because it was reading the instruction. The information. It was that one tree on the corner. So
Okay.
I don't know if that's a motion.
No, I think it's safer to go back and do this more slowly than it is to either condemn a tree to death that we don't want to, or to deny that something that may be needed more thought. So I would entertain a motion to that effect. We can do that now. Wait a minute. Let's stop. Under regulation, we can do that?
Chair Longstreet, that is definitely a possibility if you choose to do that.
I just want to make sure we're following our ordinance guidelines.
Okay, I move we postpone this till the January meeting.
And I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion, further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, we will see this item back next month with a little further information. And if you have any questions, you can contact Mr. Downey. Okay? That brings us to 3B, which is 3515 Madrona.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, 3515 Madrona Drive is a red laurel tree. It's a pretty rare tree in town. This property is in the middle of building a home on the site. It used to be a vacant site. They had previously requested removal with potential relocation of another tree at this site so that they could get a crane in to do the construction work. That was approved. The reason for the request was primarily because of the roots lifting the curb, and they were wrapped around gas pipes that may need to be repaired. When the Street Tree Advisory Committee visited the site, they noted that the tree's not in a vigorous condition and considered that as a reason to potentially replace this with another tree that will become vigorous. Their recommendation, along with staff, is to approve the removal on the condition that they replant with the same variety of tree at a location more appropriate than this one.
Okay. We have no speakers for this item. Questions of staff? Motion?
I move we concur with the Street Tree Advisory Commission and staff and approve the removal of the tree at 3515 Madrona.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next item is C1, and we do have a speaker for this one.
Fairlong Street and Commissioners, the tree at 1905 Mission Ridge Road is a rather large red gum eucalyptus tree. It's located directly on the corner. The concern that was raised was that the tree might fall like another in the near area that has done in the recent past. Upon visiting the site, I evaluated the tree. I could not determine any signs that would indicate to me that the tree is likely to fall at this time. The Street Tree Advisory Committee looked at the situation and felt that the tree was a skyline tree and consistent with some other large trees in the nearby area, and therefore they recommend to deny this request. Staff supports that recommendation as well.
And we have a speaker for this item, and that is Dr. John Clark.
Madam Chairman, Commission members, appreciate the opportunity to speak before you regarding the removal of this tree. My wife and I have lived on the southeast corner of this T-shaped intersection for 40 years, 1969. And over these years, we have seen this tree gradually tilt slowly but inexorably towards the south and towards the east. And it frankly worries us when we get our winds in the springtime and after the storms. It really moves around. A lot of leaves and branches come down, some of them 1 or 2 inches in size. A number of years ago, I would guess about 5, the arborist at that time recommended the removal of several trees smaller than this one from the corner, but felt that this particular one, which had the same black bark disease, would probably make it, and so he recommended it stay there. To my knowledge, the tree still has the disease, and I happened to pick up a bit of bark that's fallen from this tree. It sheds sheets of bark, leaves, branches. The Jennings, whom I'm sure will speak behind me, must pick up 2 barrels of debris each week from that. If they don't get to it before the rains come and it goes down the storm drains, you got a problem. We're across the street. We have that little Spanish house over there, and we get it close to a barrel once a week when we clean it. So it's a mess. This sort of tree is a garbage tree. It's a eucalyptus. They're of no value. They don't even belong in Southern California. And because of that, we feel that it should be removed. The threats to hikers, walkers, passerbyers is considerable. When it's windy, the tree, the branches come down, cars pass by here all the time. Somebody sooner or later is going to be hurt. You've already seen what Orpit Park, that wonderful tree that was up there for so many years, It went crashing down one night. Unfortunately, it didn't hit anybody. It remained in the park, and it's still there. I don't know why, but it's still there. So these things may look healthy, and the next day they're down on the ground.
Thank you.
And in addition to that, I'm very worried about the people who live south of this, directly south. They're the Jennings, and they're here today. I'm telling you, if this tree ever hit their house, it's going to make tinderwood of it. And if it ever hits our house, the Spanish one over there, it's going to get my garage with a workshop. It's going to get my carport. There's 4 vehicles, classic and antique cars in there, kitchen, and probably our bedroom.
Okay.
Many years ago on
you
Mira
wrap up
Vista, I'm going to wrap up in a minute, madam. Many years ago on Mira Vista, which is part of our street, there were 2 lemon-scented eucalyptus, and they were breaking branches and actually hit the bedroom with little children in it, and so they were removed. So there's precedence for getting rid of this sort of tree. I think, quite frankly, there's a tremendous liability on the part of the city to leave this tree here. If it branches, hit people, cars, the sky's the limit. They could have serious injury and even death.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that's the only speaker slip I have for this item. Okay.
We have to have a speaker slip to address these situations.
Yes. We need a speaker slip for so we know who to call. Come on, Ms. Jennings. And if you could hold it to 2 minutes, please, we'd like that. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, I have been before you about this tree. Actually, the last time I wasn't here because my daughter was having a baby. It was sad in the late 90s when they decided to take some of the trees down that this particular tree did stay because there was a healthier tree that did come down, but this one was right on the corner, and they did leave it. It does get those blisters on the leaves, and it drops year-round. From August to October is the worst when we are really dry, and we do pick up barrels and barrels of leaves, and these are just really from the street and not in our yard. The other thing is when I was here, probably 10 years ago, there was a different tree person in charge, and he had said that if and when we wanted to have the tree pruned, the city would prune it. Well, I have sent letters in the early 2000s requesting that the tree be pruned and never received any word back on that. So I was a little disgruntled about that. There have been broken branches in the tree. I'd say 4 years ago when I called, the city came out and they did send out someone to take care of that branch. But probably a year and a half ago or 2.5 years ago, it was in April when we had one of our big windstorms, a branch broke. It is still in the tree. Someone from the city came out, took a picture of it. It was in one of the really bad windstorms, so there were other trees that were more damaged, and I guess they felt more safety hazards. So they took care of them, and he said they'd probably get around to this, but it's been at least a year and a half or 2.5 years since anyone has, and the dead branch is still in the tree. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Tyburn?
The city is maintaining a hazard here, it's obvious. And the tree could be reduced by half and still look good and be healthy. You just have to take the danger out of the tree, and that would be rather simple if Mr. Downey would send over a crew to reduce the tree and make it safe and beautiful if it were reduced by half. Right now it's a hazard, and you're maintaining a hazard.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we'll close public comment. I will ask Ms. Jennings to please fill out a slip and leave it with staff so that we have your name and address. Okay, this is back to the commission. Questions of staff? Comments?
Yeah, I've just got a question of staff. The people from the public are saying that it's potentially hazardous. You're looking at it saying it probably isn't. So that's one question. How did you determine that? And second is, if this were to be pruned, what would the schedule be to prune it? So 2 questions.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Burns, I can't give you an exact date, but the tree is scheduled to be pruned. We will achieve that within the next 60 days. As far as what you look for in determining whether a tree is likely to fall, there's signs that you look for in the tree to determine whether it appears to be structurally sound at the root base. You look for those signs. If you can't see the signs present, you cannot assume that the tree is going to fall over. You have to see signs to prove that. We did note there was a dead branch that was stuck in the tree. It is secure. It's not going anywhere until we can get to there to trim the tree.
Okay. Other questions? And I would say, as far as the debris aspects of any tree, we would not have trees in the city if that's why we removed them, because they had leaves or bark came off them or any of those other issues. It is, we take the good with the bad with our trees, and we love them all for it. So that is not a reason for removal in my estimation. But, I would entertain a motion on this item. I am comfortable with the fact that it will be trimmed by staff within 60 days. So,
my thoughts are I hope it's done in 60 days. And there was a comment that it's, and I acknowledge we have very little money in the city. I would like to have it trimmed in 60 days, and then the question that comes up, how would we handle this so that if the applicant in 60 days or 75 days says, look, you guys have trimmed it and it's still a joke, that we can bring it back? Because I believe if we make a motion, we can't do anything for a year. So I don't know how we would.
Anytime a tree becomes unsafe, the staff can deal with it on that basis. So I'm particularly comfortable with that, because when we're talking a true safety item, and all of us, people have different comfort levels about large trees, but in our years here, we've seen how many large trees people desire to take down, but we would have no skyline trees in our community. So I think the safety issue can be dealt with always on it, and is dealt with in an immediate manner by our staff.
60 days isn't...
No, we don't take comment that way.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to deny the tree removal request at 1905 Mission Ridge Road. And I think that's it.
There a second?
Yeah, let me second it for discussion.
Okay.
I guess the question I have is, we say we're not going to let the tree be removed, and we're also telling the public that within 60 days, 75 days, the tree will be trimmed, pruned to an adequate manner. What if they, in 60 days, 75 days, come back and say, you said it would be trimmed, and it's not trimmed correctly, or it's still a problem? Do we have to wait another year? That's my question.
Okay, and what I would have to say is we can't really deal with that up here. That'd be something, if they had a problem, they'd have to go to staff with an arborist report, a certified arborist report. They can, I would think at that point, still go to council with it. I mean, it's appealable. Our decisions are appealable within 10 days. But if there's another issue, they're going to have to come back. I trust our staff. We have trained professional arborists on our staff.
Chair Longstreet, Commissioner Burns, if I could address that. You're correct that if you deny this removal, depending on the motion at hand, if you deny the removal, they cannot come back and request the removal of this committee for 1 year. However, if they can present evidence that there are dangerous conditions in the tree, we will address that at a staff level. If the dangerous conditions warrant the removal of that tree, we will make that decision administratively. Safety is our number one concern, and we will address that if it's presented to us.
Okay. Are there other questions or concerns? Then I will call for the vote. We have a motion to deny this removal. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, 2-1. Any decision we make here is appealable within 10 days to City Council. Okay, that brings us to item C2, which is 726 State Street.
Here along Street and Commissioners, 726 State Street is a Mexican fan palm that is actually located in Stork Placida at the back of the building. The reasons stated were that the tree might cause damage to the building. In discussions with the owner and at a site visit, we were not able to determine that there is any current damage to the tree. The concern is that the root buttressing is actually touching the building and may cause some damage there. Since the damage cannot be identified and the owner also states that the damage he is unaware that there is any current damage, and the nature of the tree roots, the Street Tree Advisory Committee determined that it's unlikely that the tree is going to cause damage and recommend to deny this removal, and staff concurs with that recommendation.
Questions? We have no speakers for this item. Questions? Motion?
Yeah, let me make a comment on a motion. I looked at that, and it's like an eighth of the tree is surrounding the corner of that building. So I looked and I said, well, if there's damage, then we need to take it out. But if they're not able to find any structural damage to the building, then I don't think we need to remove the tree. It really does look like something should be happening, but I guess it isn't. With that being said, I move that we concur with staff and the Street Tree Advisory Committee and deny removal of this tree on State Street.
Okay. And I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. That brings us to C3, and we have a number of speakers for this item. Mr. Downey, will you present?
Chair Long Street and Commissioners, 532 Brincroft Avenue, the request is to remove 2 Canary Island pine trees. The Canary Island pine is the current designated species for that street. There are some large Mexican fan palms that have been there preceding the pine trees. The concerns were numerous. Some of those were safety of cars that park under it, some damage to the sidewalk, and pine cones that could be slip hazards. The entire street of all the pines on the street are scheduled to be trimmed again within the next 60 days. The applicant mentions that there's a project that's going to change the parking on that street. That is true. It hasn't been determined the exact date of that change. In discussions with the staff for that project, they are reluctant to give a date because there's been some delays in the construction, so they have not determined an exact date for that at this time. The Street Advisory Committee and staff determined that pruning will decrease the amount of debris that falls from the tree and recommend denial of these trees.
Okay. We will hear from the public now. We'll start with Jean Connie. And no, you need to come up to the mic so we get you on.
Here.
Okay, Kenneth, please. And if you could keep it to 2 minutes, we'd appreciate it. There's a little clock on the counter there. Is it Carrie? Okay.
Madam Chairman, Commission, thank you for the opportunity to talk. I'm Kenneth Carey, the applicant. I live at 532 Brinkerhoff. My wife and I have owned the property since 1957. We have lived there since the late 1960s. We have no knowledge of when these trees were planted and do not remember ever being notified that they were being planted. At the time they were planted, were they authorized by the Historic Landmark Committee, since Brinkerhoff is a landmark district? The committee and staff has determined that the trees are healthy and reasons provided by applicant are not sufficient to justify removal. I don't dispute the fact that they're healthy. They are really healthy. I think they grow about 100 feet a year. At some point in time, they started out very small. Okay, I believe that the reasons listed in my letter accompanying my application, which should be in your packet, and agreed to by at least 15 of the neighbors, is sufficient to justify their removal. Some of the reasons are problems from adjacent neighbors from falling needles and pine cones, resin dripping from trees onto cars, damaging paint. The arborists stated they're going to be trimmed, and that sure helps the sap, because it really starts falling after they trim the tree. Falling pine cones, denting hoods and roofs of cars, as well as falling on passerbys. I have been hit numerous times by pine cones when I've been walking on the sidewalk, and they hurt. Okay, accumulation of pine needles on sidewalks, curbside lawn, which keeps the lawn from growing because it covers it and kills the grass, and in gutters create potential walking hazards. The roots have caused the sidewalk, the curb, and the front parapet in front of my house to raise at least 1.5 inches, and we have had the city to come out at least twice just to patch it, to put a ramp in there. And they patch it with asphalt. This then creates a hazardous condition for pedestrians, and particularly for the elderly and those using canes and walkers. The heavy growth, since they are seldom pruned, and I say seldom because I can't remember when the last time these were pruned, and there have been at least 2 instances where falling limbs have damaged cars, in one case quite severely. I have no knowledge of whose cars they were, whether there was insurance, whether the city was contacted, but there have been at least 2 instances. If the trees are not removed and they need to be pruned and cut back on a regular schedule. They have lots of overgrowing limbs, and they fall. Oops. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. In view of the above, I am requesting that the Commission approve the application for removal. If not, I am requesting the Commission not act on the staff recommendation until a meeting with the neighbors can be held on site, so the neighbors can explain to the arborist and to the Commission what the problems are. The problems are not the trees themselves, it's what the trees create. Thank you.
Okay. Jean Carr, and Jean will be followed by Barbara Prumo? Okay.
Madam Chairman and Commissioners.
You're speaking to the mic? Speaking to the mic so we can
Madam
hear.
Chairman and Commissioners.
Thank you.
You have a disaster in the making. And being a school teacher, I brought my show and tell. On a heavy, windy day, these things cover my grass so that I cannot even see the green. I walk with 2 canes. I have 3 pins in each foot and no balance, so I cannot get out and sweep and brush the things off the sidewalk, and neither can my husband with his health problems. We need help. We need to get rid of the trees. How about trading that last tree in with these 2 that we've got? Since the historical tree was the Washingtonian Robusta palms on Brinkerhoff. We're a landmark district and we're going for an historic district. How about putting a couple of those palms instead of these monsters on our block? those would be the conditions that would help us tremendously. We are asking that you come and talk to our homeowners, and this is not just Kenny and I, but several of the other neighbors also. Want you to come out, meet the neighbors, talk to us in the neighborhood, see why we object to these two huge ones that are the only ones on the block, where the rest are palms or are some form of a pear tree. Include us in your decisions. Please don't sit behind desks and tell us what we're going to have. The needles are terribly slippery. I have to be so careful when I get out there with my two canes. You say there's no evidence of damage. Well, we have over the last 50 years seen the damage. I'm afraid I'm going to break a hip slipping on these things on the sidewalk. When they put in the Haley Bridge, they will be closing off near the end of Brinkerhoff, so all cars will be parked facing at an angle on these trees. Kenny and I cannot get out and clean this mess up. You need to send out somebody about every other day to get it off the sidewalks so that it's safe. Even if you prune these things, they still will drip.
Yeah.
We do not want them. It was very easy to get 15 neighbors to sign and say they don't want them. We also want to know, why were those trees chosen without talking to all of us? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Barbara will be followed by Paul Primo.
Madam Commissioner and Commissioners, everything she says is absolutely true. As far as the leaves, I push my mother uptown every day, and the sidewalks, I had to stop with a wheelchair and bring it back to get over
Speak into the mic so they
to
hear
get
you.
over the hump. Now they've put asphalt on it, and it's better, but it's not going to last. As far as the needles, it is dangerous, very dangerous, and they can be an inch thick the next day after they're cleared off, and I just don't think it's right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul will be followed by Fran Jennings. Oh, that's... Hi.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you. The biggest safety problem you have here are the needles. I've slipped on them myself. I'm not the youngest like I used to be, and I haven't fallen, but I've slipped and caught myself numerous times. My car's been parked underneath those pine trees, big. I think she has some here. The cones dropped on the roof and put a big dent in it. Not a big dent, a small dent, or I would have got really angry. All in all, they just don't fit. I don't care if they're supposed to be on that street or not. They don't fit. And a lot of them have died, and they've taken them out across the street, especially from, we're just down 2 doors from the Cares in 524. Across the street, they've taken a couple of trees out because they died. Same thing. They were big messes over there. And it's going to be just a tremendous mess, and, we really don't want them.
Okay. Thank you. Wanda Livernoy. And Wanda will be followed by Carl Hightower. And just a reminder to people, if you would turn off your cell phones, it'd be helpful.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners and Mayor, Mrs. Longstreet.
No promotions today, thanks.
The downtown is made up, obviously, of buildings and people and trees, and we do need trees, but we also need happy neighbors. And even though I love trees, I would say that these have caused enough of a problem with the people who walk back and forth. I live across the street, so they have not been that much of a problem to me, but they are to my neighbors. And from a historical point of view, probably we should look at all of the trees on Brinkerhoff and make them historical in that they should be palms, because probably that's what we had originally all over the street. So anyway, I support the Carrie's request.
Thank you. Mr. Hightower, and he'll be followed by Mr. Tyburn will be our last speaker.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, thank you for all that you do in behalf of our community, and I know this sometimes is a real hassle. During my past 100 years, I've been accused of sometimes, most of the time, being a tree hugger. And at one time I was going to sit in a tree that was being demolished. At any rate, and I like pine trees. They're beautiful, but they're not appropriate on our street. We are a landmark district. I believe that we have no verification that HLC was involved in the planting of the trees. We weren't aware of the trees being planted until after they were planted, after the fact. It is, they are creating a dangerous situation. My home is adjacent to the Careys, and the two trees are on the parkway in front of their home. I receive an adequate supply of the needles which cover my grass. We try to maintain some grassy areas there on our street, and most of you know Brinkerhoff District and our street. We have thousands of dog walkers, well, not quite thousands, but many, because of our grass there, and we're very friendly people. We're okay with that. The needles do cover and create a sliding effect with many people. We have even fifth generation on our street, as you know. People have lived there for 5 generations, or descendants of them. And so we have elderly people on our street. Not that I'm one of them, but anyway, we have elderly. And sometimes some of them use wheelchairs and some use canes. And the bumps are forthcoming. We already have a crack and a rise in the sidewalk that's created by one of the trees, pine trees, and it'll probably continue. We have some asphalt thrown in that area, but it would deteriorate. It's already beginning to leave. My biggest concern is that the safety issue. The second concern is that they're not a part of the historical aspect of the street, ambiance. Jake Jacobus, who's our urban historian, is working with us in terms of designating the palm trees as historic sites, historic trees, such as Ventura and Carpinteria and Lompoc have done.
Okay.
So
Can you wrap up?
we think that's more appropriate. And thank you very much.
Thank you. And Mr. Tyburn will be our last speaker.
I'd like to speak for the tree in a way. Now it's become the wrong tree in the wrong place. But if the tree were pruned very hard and a little root pruning, the tree would be an addition to the street and not be an aggravation to the people around it. The trouble is, it's delayed maintenance by at least 5 years. This is an obvious hazard, the way it sits right now, and it could be mitigated by a hard pruning, more than a third. And I want to thank you, sir, for actually going out and looking at trees. I really appreciate your efforts being there looking. That's really wonderful. Thank you. So I think the tree has a potential if it's root pruned and root buried, and if you can't do that or afford that, then possibly another tree might be appropriate in that location.
Thank you. Okay, with that, I will close the public comment, and it's back to the commission. Questions or comments? I have a question. We have a big project coming up there that doesn't really affect the trees, though, on Brinkerhoff Street, does it?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, the project does not, it is around the corner. They are altering the parking on this street to allow for better traffic flow as a result of closing an intersection.
Okay, and my other question is, no, we don't do that. I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. We don't do that. It has to be on tape. It isn't a give and take. We have public comment. And, my other question is the historic district. Is there, with a project going forward to create a historic district, is that the time to deal? Like, I don't want to take these trees out now in a rush when we have something coming forward that will plan it out appropriately. Is that?
Chair Longstreet, in light of the people speaking today, the staff is more than willing to meet with them on site and discuss the trees. If they chose to request a street tree designation change and maybe presented that to the Historic Landmark Commission for their opinion and brought it back to this commission for a designation change, that could improve the situation as well. Staff would support postponing a decision and allowing time to talk to the neighbors and explore that opportunity.
Because obviously this tree designation, it hasn't happened in the last 14 years. These trees are older trees. They're not new trees. So they've been in there quite a while. That happened way before any of our time. But, you know, I would like to find out a little bit more about the historic district. How many, today when I went over to Brinkerhoff, there aren't very many pines left on the street, are there? Only about 4 that I...
That's correct, Chair.
Okay. See, we do go out and look at our trees. So we're getting close to the end of the pine tree time, and we do need to look at a probably redesignation of that street in the future.
So Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, what I might suggest is that staff will work with the staff in the planning department that are involved with the discussion of the historic district and perhaps schedule a site meeting with the neighbors. So, because I think the discussion is really centered around the historic district. And so I think it's just that the trees are part of that. So that would be our suggestion.
Just to bring that back in a month
with the planning division to make sure that they have the appropriate people there. Perhaps I have no idea where that effort is in the city's process, but we'll make sure that the appropriate people are there.
I think I would feel more comfortable having all that information before we make a decision, because, you know, I understand the trees are messy and all of that, and I understand that they're up for some pruning, and hopefully it will be a nice pruning that will make it more pleasant. But I also think, and as you've seen tonight already, we could denude the city for many times for different reasons. So we are very careful about the removal of any trees. We do care deeply that we keep our mature trees in our community. So I'd rather postpone a decision and make it with better information than I would to condemn these trees tonight without knowing what their future is and where things are happening.
I'd agree with that. And in the past, over the last several years, we've met with neighborhoods before and come to decisions. So it's great to have the support of people here talking about this, and we're glad you came. And yes, I'd agree with that.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, I'm sorry just to interrupt before anybody makes a motion. With the holidays and the city's unpaid furlough for the next 2 weeks, I would imagine that, you know, we would coordinate this site visit sometime in January, and this may not come back to the Commission until February, just to allow the time for us to have the meeting with the neighbors on site.
Okay. So how does Mr. Burns?
Yeah, and just if we could, as we talk of these 2 trees, it's the other 2 pine trees at 507, we ought to get the whole street together to see however it gets planned. And with the historic district, we want to make it right. But I that's, you know, let's let's come up with a good general plan.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Burns, yes, that is exactly what we would do when we have a situation where a group of neighbors are asking to change a designation. It is, you know, we involve all of the neighbors, so we would post the notice, and usually the neighbors work with us to make sure that the other homeowners are present at the meeting. So usually they're very successful meetings.
And I think if you would give us an email, maybe one. I know we don't. Please turn off cell phones. One of us will come, I would think. One or two of us of commission would come to that.
But earlier we were talking, it's still being planned to trim that tree. Is that still in process without us making any decision?
Chair Longstreet, Commissioner Burns, we still plan to prune the trees within 60 days. Our feeling is if it goes much longer than that, that we will start to lose branches. So we will do that anyways without a decision.
And there was a comment earlier in the letter, if we could talk to the Public Works Department that handles street sweeping, if they're talking that they're not street sweeping, we ought to make a recommendation that they revisit that also.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Burns, I believe that I am not familiar with that project and who's working with it, but I would encourage the homeowners, if they haven't already, to express that as a concern to the people that you're meeting with on the project. And I don't know the reasons for discontinuing the street cleaning, and that's not really within our purview. So that is really a something to follow up with the project coordinators.
Okay. Well, with that, I would entertain a motion to postpone.
Yes. I would like to make a motion to postpone until next month or the following. Yes, the February. The item at 532 Brinkerhoff Avenue.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, that brings us to 1419. And if you have any questions, please contact Mr. Downey. I would say that. Okay. 1419 Laguna Street.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, 1419 Laguna Street is one of the largest camphor trees that we have for street trees in the city. The buttress roots on the tree take up a good portion of the parkway. The tree is in good health, and the Street Tree Advisory Committee determined the reasons for removal did not justify removal and recommend that you deny the removal, and staff supports that recommendation.
Okay. Are there any questions of staff?
It may not be a question of staff, but it may have been if the applicant made a comment that the tree was interfering with water, sewer, and sidewalk, and interfering is such a broad base. Just a recommendation for applicants to interfering doesn't really give much detail, and I don't know if it's interfering breaking or interfering just because I don't know, and I don't think we have anything from the applicant of what actually has happened. Do you know, sir?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Burns, I've had a discussion with the applicant, and they've had a number of times that they had to have the line cleaned out and found roots in that sewer line.
Okay, we do have a speaker for this item, Mr. Tyburn.
I happen to know this tree
come on up to the
I
mic.
know this tree very well because I work for these people. The tree is a beautiful tree, very healthy, but it is causing excessive amount of damage. It is the beautiful tree in the wrong place and going to cause you more and more troubles down the line. If you want to be able to spend a lot of money, long run, long range goals, I think the tree should be reduced mightily, and the problem they're having there on a regular basis is a sewer blockage. Now, I don't know if that can ever be handled because the sewer runs right underneath the tree, so I don't understand or know why or how you're going to deal with that situation unless you were to say, well, let's keep the tree, we'll pay for clean out every so often. But they're going through a tremendous amount of expense in cleaning out the sewer line. I'm surprised the applicant isn't here because they're really concerned about it. but it is a knockout tree, but it's lifting up the street, the sidewalk, and everything around there. I don't know if you people did go over and look at this, but you can see it's considerable damage. So you're caught between a rock and a hard place because it is a knockout tree, and it is in the wires, and it's just too big a tree in the wrong place. Now, you know, we're all in this room, we're all tree huggers in this room. We all love trees or wouldn't be here. But sometimes an object gets so big and so cumbersome and so expensive that you have to think about doing something about it. And I'm a firm believer that trees are here to serve us, not for us to serve the trees, or because they wouldn't be here if it weren't for us.
Thank you.
So I hope what I said has something to do with some decision you make.
Thank you. Okay. Questions of staff or motion?
Yeah, I agree that it seems rather large in that location, but it also looks very nice. I also saw some uplifting of the concrete. And maybe trimming it might help, but I can't justify having that tree removed. I would move to concur with staff and the Streets Tree Advisory Committee to deny the removal request at 1419 Laguna Street.
I just had one quick question about the...
We have a motion. We need second before discussion.
Okay, I'll second it, but I just had a quick question. The wires. Does not the electric company maintain their wires and trim trees in that situation?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Connor, the Southern California Edison clears for high voltage wires.
Okay.
The other utility companies have a right to clear for their wires. They design these wires specifically knowing that they're going to go through trees and choose not to prune those around those wires, partially based on the design of the structures.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. We have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. That brings us to D. D1 and 2 we have no speakers for, I don't believe. Can we take those two items together? You can, I think they're both approvals.
Absolutely, Chair Longstreet. Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, the tree at 612 Willow Glen is a Mexican fan palm. The applicant is concerned about how close it is to the building, and the tree was a volunteer, which they felt they should have dealt with before it got large. They also desire to get rid of the invasive ivy that's in that planter and plant some fruit trees in that space. The Street Tree Advisory Committee and staff determined that there's absolutely no way to completely get rid of the ivy without the removal of this tree, and the planting of other trees would be beneficial to the area. So therefore, we recommend that you approve this removal. The tree at 3699 Rock Creek Road is the Indian laurel fig planted directly adjacent to a driveway that has significant damage. The tree is so close to the driveway, it would destabilize the tree to do any root pruning to make those corrections. And based on those reasons, the Street Advisory Committee and staff recommend that this be approved.
There are questions of staff? Motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve the removal of the trees at 612 Willow Glen Road and 3699 Rock Creek Road.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Everyone that came. That brings us to to new business, our advisory committee appointments for action.
Chair Longstreet, you have before you a number of recommendations to appoint people who are currently in the position to continue their service. You have 2 vacancies, 1 request for a reappointment in the Golf Advisory Committee, and 2 appointments for the IPM Advisory Committee, and 2 appointments for the Street Tree Advisory Committee.
Okay, are there any question or discussion about our applicants? All of these are reappointments? What? Oh, 3 are, okay.
I am just very happy that they've done good work in the past and they're willing to continue.
I agree.
I agree also. So, well, I would move that we would reappoint to the Golf Advisory Committee, IPM, and Street Tree Advisory Committee. Do you want them all named in that, or Carla will take? Okay. I would make that motion.
And I'll second that motion.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Now we are to, and welcome, thank you to all of those applicants for
Yes.
coming back. That brings us to item 5, the co-sponsorship.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners Judith Cook McCaffrey will give this report.
Good evening, Chair Longstreet and Commissioners. My name is Judith McCaffrey, and I'm here this evening to provide an update, a follow-up from your budget work session of December 3rd. And at that work session, I gave a report regarding the department's various agreements with local organizations. And following that discussion, you requested that I provide you with some additional information on the value of the use of city facilities that we provide in many of these agreements. So I've attached an updated report. I'm going to highlight a few of the changes and additions that I included in just a minute. But on behalf of the public who might be watching tonight's meeting, I just wanted to give a little brief background on this report in the first place. It's been a long-standing practice of the Parks and Recreation Department to encourage and assist various civic and charitable nonprofit organizations in the development of recreation programs that serve our community. And currently, our department has 13 co-sponsorship agreements with local nonprofits ranging from AARP to Boney Baseball, Santa Barbara Firefighters Association, the Santa Barbara Rose Society, and the Tennis Patrons, just to give a few examples. We have 5 facility use agreements, 1 license agreement, and 4 joint use agreements with the Santa Barbara City College and the school district, in which we share our resources and we combine them to better serve our community. These agreements assist the department in extending our limited resources so we can better meet the needs of our community. As you know, we're now planning for the fiscal 2011 budget process, and as you know, the department is going to be experiencing some significant budget reductions, and this prompted staff to review a number of our current agreements. We considered the number of participants that each of these groups serve, what recreation activities and services they provide to the community through these agreements, and what the city provides to the organization, the value of that in services, facility use, or vehicle use. When evaluating these agreements, we wanted to consider the level of support that the city provides and also identify any opportunities to increase the revenue to the city in order to recover more of our costs. And then we also finally wanted to look at standardizing the level of support that we provide to each of these groups. In referring to the document, I just wanted to point out a few of the things that you'd asked me to calculate. And actually, if you look at the 3rd page, under facility use agreements, on that page is where the majority of changes are. Primarily, the first one, Mackenzie Park Lawn Bowls Club. You'd asked me to calculate the rental value of the facility, and that facility is about 2,400 square feet. So based on our nonprofit rental rate of about $1.08 a square foot, the rental for that facility calculates out to about $31,000 annually, or $2,600 a month. So that brings the total value of the McKenzie Park Lawn Bowls agreement to $41,000 annually, and that actually does not include some building maintenance costs for facility for maintenance and utilities. That's just for the building, yes. That doesn't include the maintenance costs that we're still awaiting for Public Works, but also the rental rate that I quoted you is for the square footage of the building and doesn't also consist of the grounds area as well.
Okay.
I also added a group to our list that I'd inadvertently left off, and that's to give you an example. Primo Boxing is a group that serves youth and a few adults in a co-ed boxing program, and they rent the Youth Sports Center and have exclusive use of that facility. And we're currently waiving about 49% of the facility use fees for that group and the use of that facility. Then we have the Santa Barbara Lawn Bowls Club. Their facility is a little over 1,400 square feet in size. And so when you use that same calculation for the square footage, that's approximately annual rental of about $18,000 annually for the building only, for a total of a little over $35,000 annually. And lastly, I applied that to the Santa Barbara Swim Club, as we do provide them office space that's about 300 square feet. So based on that office space rental would be approximately $3,800 a year at the going rate. So their agreement value is total waived approximately $73,000. And actually, those were the changes to the document. The additions, if you had any questions regarding any of those, I'd be happy to answer those.
No, thank you for. It's a good report. I think it's interesting to see how much the city does provide indirectly to other recreation programs. The support is. It's important to see that in black and white. Mr. Burns.
Yeah, thank you very much for the report. I have one question which I brought up at the last meeting. On the lawn bowling, we're showing a rental rate of $1.08, or $1.08 per square foot. Yet on the Horseshoe Club, instead of charging a rental rate for sand, with them doing most of the work, we're waiving fees at $10 an hour, I think. $10, coming up with closer to $30,000. And you might look at wherever we're just renting sand, which I think sometimes we're renting sand at the beach, and maybe look at that from the Horseshoe Club at that perspective, because it may bring a different perspective. If you know what I'm
Well, yeah, I know what you mean. Actually, I believe that, for example, volleyball courts rent for $16 an hour currently. Okay. And I believe that I actually, for the horseshoe pits, I calculated that at $8 an hour, figuring that fewer people would play at a horseshoe pit at a time than a volleyball court.
Okay. I guess then my comment is, how many people besides the members of the horseshoe pit have ever rented or used those horseshoe pits, although it's nice that we're lowering the cost? But if we were to give them exclusive use for that, we might charge them less, and they are actually doing not all of the maintenance, but it seems like a lot of the maintenance on the property. And it's just a little nitpicking item. I just trying to, if we're looking at two different properties, we ought to look at them from the same way, not two different ways. That's just a comment.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Burns, I think part of the problem is we don't look at them differently. When we assess fees in our buildings, we generally, other than when we have park rental, we have facility rental rates. Our easiest comparison has been the square footage rate at the nonprofit rate for like our community centers, because we don't really have we use that as a model. And in our parks, the comparison rate is more based on what those areas rent for through a park permit. So we really don't look at them the same. I think all that said, the question of the Horseshoe Club is really more about, how is the area used, and should other people be able to use it, and then what are we getting in return from the Horseshoe Club, which is the discussion that we had at the commission, aside from whatever value we place on it.
Thank you.
And lastly, I wanted to comment that it was your recommendation at the work session that staff move forward and begin to meet with representatives from some of these various groups. And just to let you know that we're making these contacts now, and we'll be proceeding with some meetings to discuss some of these issues.
Well, I think following up on what Commissioner Burns said, I mean, it's like comparing apples and oranges in all of these different, when you start factoring in all of the different rental uses and requirements and maintenance, and I mean, there's 100 variables in it. The fact that you've calculated out the rental space of the lawn bowling clubs, but really what's, the facility around it, the greens themselves, and, so I think at some point we don't want to drive you crazy to get to the, 100th variable in this, and also realizing that it will take some time to realign agreements that we have had for a multitude of years. I mean, we can't look at something that we've done for 30 years one way and change it in a year. So I think the challenge is to move towards more standardization, but to be flexible, to keep programming alive in a lot of cases. So this is going to be challenging, but I do think it needs to be done, and I think all the organizations that we partner with need to understand that we're leveling a playing field, so to speak, and that things are going to be changing, albeit sometimes slowly, but there will be incremental changes annually to bring things into a sense of fairness for everyone. So you got your work cut out for you. And I think we should keep discussing this and, report back how these meetings are going. And, you need to know that you have sort of the will of the commission behind you to make these changes, because that's when budget time comes around. We will be hearing from each and every one of these groups that have a change in front of them. And I just would like to be kept apprised of those negotiations as they go forward, when it's appropriate.
We'll certainly keep you updated through the budget process.
Yes, and I just, I know we have good relationship with so many of these organizations. We don't want to jeopardize that, but the reality needs, staring us all in the face. So, is there any other comments, or this is not for action, this is just information, so keep going. Thank you for all of the work you're putting into this. I know it's a whole new way of looking at things, and we're all learning as we go. So thank you. Do we have it brings us to our administrative and staff reports. Any Parks and Recreation budget for discussion?
Chair Longstreet, actually, before we do that, I would like to go back to an item that we kind of skipped over on the agenda, and I realized I was going to make some comments too. We had on the agenda recognition of Ada Connor, outgoing Park and Recreation Commissioner, and so the commission actually discussed this prior to that. Well, we didn't discuss it prior to the meeting, but I made the announcement prior to the meeting that earlier today the department received an inquiry from the city clerk's office as to whether Commissioner Connor would consider staying on the commission another 6 months to fill the vacancy that we have, understanding that through the spring, the council will be recruiting applicants who would be appointed in June. And I'm very pleased to report that Commissioner Connor very graciously, on her way out the door, decided that she would stay.
Turned right around and came back. She just couldn't leave us. That's a good thing.
And just in the spirit demonstrating how she has served on this commission, she remarked to me that she actually would appreciate having the opportunity to help the 2 new commissioners become more familiar with the department. And so we really appreciate that, and we appreciate her agreeing to serve for another 6 months.
We do. Thank you. It's an honor to be asked, and I will gladly uphold my duties.
Thank you. Thank you. And I would just like to recognize that one of our newly appointed commissioners is here tonight. Welcome, Mr. Casebeer. We're glad to have you. And look forward to the 2 new appointments and Ms. Connor and having a full complement in January. Correct. Yes.
As I recall, a year ago, I was sitting in the audience and I was asked, without expecting to say anything, to come to the podium. And I just, if Chris
Ooh,
feels...
you're mean, aren't you?
I'm not trying to push, but thank you very much,
Mr.
sir.
Casebeer is never shy.
Scott, my question to you is, what did you say?
They said I don't speak very often, and thank you.
Well, I do speak on occasion, and it's an honor to be here, and I look forward to learning about my parks and recreation facilities in this community, and looking forward to working with everyone. Thanks.
We're glad to have you aboard. Thank you very much for applying. Okay.
And so back to item number 6, the Parks and Recreation budget. I did just want to follow up from the December work session and let you know that I have asked Ms. McGill to begin the scheduling for the next commission budget work session. And the focus of that will be on reviewing the samples of the cost recovery fee policies that staff will go through and select maybe 3 versions that the commission can consider and discuss. The 3 versions that we've collected from other communities that seem to be working well, to look and see if there's something in there that they would like to model a policy for the city of Santa Barbara on. So I have asked her if she would work on scheduling that work session, and I would imagine that it will probably be towards the end of January. And then also, because we will have new commissioners, and as I mentioned before, we will also try to do the work session on the urban forestry program, because I also believe, this program has had some pretty significant hits from the budget, and I think that it will help in the context of the budget consideration as we move forward. So we'll probably, this is a lot of additional meetings for the commission. I think we'll probably continue to see some work sessions until the budget is adopted, but I get the sense from the commission that these work sessions have been very helpful, which was our intent. It's been helpful for staff to hear the commission discussion. And so we will move forward with those 2 budget work sessions.
I would also like not to add a whole ton more work to your schedule, but besides our 2 new commissioners, we will have 2 new council members, and I think we should schedule a parks tour, as we have done in the past, to familiarize our new council people and commissioners with some of the issues, choose some of the areas where we're working or have ongoing projects or issues.
Chair Longstreet and commissioners, I actually have that on our list of things to do. And we actually have 3 new council members.
3 new council members. Well, you'll lose track over time. What's a council member here or there? Okay. So we will continue with budget in 2010. Neighborhood and outreach services. I know we had a meeting that was postponed due to some membership attendance. Couldn't be in attendance, so.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Carrie Longstreet and Commissioners, I'm going to give you an update of what's taken place over the last month in neighborhood and outreach services. And I don't have any information about the rescheduling of that meeting was canceled. That is working on bringing the neighborhood advisories together and to developing membership and their roles and responsibilities. But given the holidays and the furlough, we probably will reconvene in January. Though we are getting closer to the membership designation of how we want it structured in that way, we do have a lot of work in putting together where their roles and responsibilities will lie, given that they are bringing it together and because we want to improve the line of communication. So more time will need to be spent. We don't want to rush through this, and we are going to spend a good amount of time. And because we have new council members, we want to include them in the process and educate them in the process so that we get their understanding of how citizens can be heard from the neighborhoods as well.
Great.
So in general, something that has just taken place. For the last month, over 4,200 individuals were served in our food distribution, legal clinics, health screening, flu shot clinics, among the other community services that has taken place. This is a 27% increase over the previous month of 3,100 individuals. And there's a spike in that number for 2 reasons. The flu clinics bring in a lot of people. And also when Thanksgiving takes place, we do our food distribution jumps up as well, and we deliver a lot of turkeys and food goods for the Thanksgiving time. Recently, in conjunction with Parks, we have submitted community development block grants that were due this afternoon. The proposals were coordinated with the city's Neighborhood Improvement Task Force and the center's advisory committees and submitted today. Our requests include for Ortega Park, a restroom renovation, sidewalk repair, and basketball court rehabilitation at that park. We are also proposing the Cabrillo Ball Field have restroom fencing and bleacher replacement to enclose around what that large area on that corner right there. The Franklin Center, at Franklin Center, we're proposing to take 2 of the previous offices and turn them into a teen center room, kind of remodeling, bringing 2 rooms together into a larger area so we can have a dedicated space for teen programming there. We're also requesting heating and air conditioning projects at both the Davis and West Side centers. When we look to have either rental functions or primarily cooling centers in the summertime for seniors, neither of those facilities have any air conditioning, so we're asking for that. And we are also asking for a neighborhood enhancement grant program to improve parkways. A very small amount of money, but just to start for neighborhood and advisory committees to get involved with improving their areas. And also requesting additional funds for our job apprentice program. So all of those went in today, and we'll find out sometime in January what has been awarded. We also tomorrow are submitting a grant request to the County Workforce Investment Board for $49,000. That was the maximum amount that you could request to expand our job apprentice program. It's going to be focusing on our at-risk and underserved youth. And we will be working with the MADIC group of organizations, and the Santa Barbara County Education Office the caseworkers that serve youth that are behind in their educational levels and are also maybe on probation. Those two organizations, we heard from very strongly today, over the summer, that we needed more funding for youth jobs. So we're very hopeful that that will continue to expand the funding that we have available for the Job Apprentice Program. And we'll be finding that out probably later in the spring as well. Applications were processed recently for the community gardens, and at the close of the application period on December 1st, 65% of the garden spots were taken. Typically that happens, and in the next 2 months they'll fill up. We look forward to that taking place now, and also to refocus on the youth programming, which is a highlight of the merger of these teen programs and community services. They've been doing a lot of programming at the centers, Franklin and Westside, and at the Teen Center. And we just completed a teen survey with many of the new participants at those two new sites. And their service priorities were identified as jobs, workshops on youth and the law, driver's education classes, media skills development, culinary skills workshops, and community service projects, and tutoring services. So those were the highest ones on their list. They also identified, of course, the fun stuff, having occasional dances, excursions, and different athletic activities to, round out the whole kind of offerings. So staff will be working on different ways to bring those to the centers, what partners we can look to bring different activities to the centers, but some ideas have already taken place. The Jolly Brothers Catering holds a lease at the Westside Center in the kitchen there, and he, in conjunction with staff, are beginning to develop a culinary skills program where he could actually use job apprentices and teach them the catering business and maybe move them towards attending City College if they wanted to, in the culinary and hotel management school, that type of thing. So we're looking into that, how to enter into businesses doing that type of thing. So we look forward to hearing more about that as it comes forward and staff spend the time to put those programs together. 20 students have been participating in the Healthy Options for Teens program. This was a program funded by the Santa Barbara Foundation, again this year. And as part of the class, they've prepared 3 different meals with the assistance of adult volunteers, and they also assisted with the 31st annual adapted Thanksgiving dinner at the Cabrillo Arts Pavilion. They assisted in preparation and serving that meal. So that was kind of an exciting time for them.
Very good.
Yeah. Also, we had teen volunteers help out with the Santa Barbara International Marathon, and they will also be hosting the holiday dinner celebration at the Westside Center, where they will cook the food and serve it to about 200 adults and children. It's an annual event that's held there.
Excellent.
Not over yet here. Also, a group of teens from the Westside Center wrote and submitted a grant proposal to the Santa Barbara Foundation to conduct law and youth rights classes, so youth can find out their rights under the law and become more educated, help their families, help themselves. So we'll be finding that out later in January. It was very well received. We recently hired about 200 apprentices to work after school, and they're being currently placed at different job sites. So even though the summer portion has ended, we have enough funding to continue on with some youth in after-school programs. The Youth Council continues to hold its meetings regularly. I won't touch on that because our intern already has. And one more thing, the Santa Barbara Teen Coalition held its quarterly lunch, and where there's about 30 participants that come together, talk about teen services, how we can do a better job of working together. And they received a presentation from the Orfalea Foundation on youth development at that luncheon. So there you go, a lot going on, and
a lot, yes, very good. Excellent.
Things are moving forward.
I'm excited about hearing about Parkway project. I would love to see some low-cost ideas for parkways. You know, as a resident of the Lower West Side, that's a big issue for a lot of us. And if we had some ideas out there of things we could do, that would be very cool.
Well, I think it's an opportunity for citizens to come to the advisory committee and take a small piece of money and do an improvement in their area and bring pride to their own neighborhood and own block. So ownership of that is a really good idea.
But it also just may give some of the rest of us ideas on different ways to do
Yeah.
things, what
Yeah.
kind of plants to use, what kind of materials, and, you know, that's a good idea.
Yes.
Great. Other questions of staff on this report? Mr. Burns?
I guess more of a comment. As we rearranged, the teen council is kind of in a different umbrella within the organization, and talking to my other gentleman right here, he says it's moving along smoothly for teen council. How is it going from staff's perspective?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioner Burns, Susan Young still is supervising that program, and it continues to develop as it has in the past. One of the great things about Youth Council is they are always coming up with new projects and new things to do and new ways to participate, you know, based on what their high schools and activities are taking place, and to bring new kids in and into the teen center. So that is moving along smoothly at this time.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have anything else tonight? Then I think we could entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And I opposed. And I wish everybody a happy holiday season. And we will see you in January. And a reminder that the offices will be closed for 2 weeks starting the 21st.
And not all Parks and Recreation offices will be closed. The administration office will be closed, but some of our offices will remain open because we have services and programs that are continuing over the holidays. So for accurate information on what offices are still open and how to reach staff, the best way to do that is to go to the city's website and click on the information there related to the city's furlough. And then you can find